The large estate was eerily quiet as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble floors. In the main living room, a thick tension hung in the air, palpable to everyone in the house. The sound of a child crying echoed from upstairs, sharp and frantic, piercing through the otherwise serene atmosphere. The soft rustling of footsteps could be heard as the staff tried to comfort the young boy, but nothing seemed to work. His cries grew louder, more desperate, until it felt like the very walls were vibrating with his pain. He was only 8, a small child who had never fully learned to express his emotions, his world tangled in a web of confusion, frustration, and fear. His name was Eli Vale, and he had been diagnosed with autism at an early age, which often led to unpredictable outbursts and emotional breakdowns. But today, nothing anyone had done seemed to calm him. His parents had tried everything: their voices, toys, distractions, even his favorite blanket. But nothing worked. And now, his father, Preston Vale, stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, frustration and helplessness painted across his face. He was a powerful man, used to solving problems with money, influence, or sheer force of will. But here, in the quiet of his own home, he was powerless. Eli's mother, Clara, stood beside him, tears welling in her eyes as she looked toward the stairs, her face a mask of sorrow and helplessness. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Preston clenched his jaw, his mind racing for a solution, any solution. He had seen therapists, tried every possible treatment, but it was as if the more he tried to control the situation, the further Eli slipped away. The boy's emotional state seemed impossible to reach. In the midst of all this chaos, a figure stood at the edge of the room. Maya Williams, the black maid who had been working for the family for months, had quietly entered the room, sensing the disturbance. She wasn't part of the family's inner circle, nor was she someone they paid much attention to. To them, she was just another staff member, one who quietly went about her cleaning duties without complaint. But Maya was not like the other staff. She had been around long enough to understand the dynamics of the family, the tension that seemed to hang over every conversation, the isolation Eli felt in his own world. Maya had always been quiet, observant, and patient. When she heard the boy's cries, something inside her stirred. She had worked with children before, in places no one would ever expect someone like her to be. And she knew one thing for sure: Eli needed someone who would listen to him, someone who would not try to force him into a mold that didn't fit. She moved quietly upstairs, her heart beating faster with each step. When she reached Eli's room, she paused at the door. The sight that met her eyes was heartbreaking. Eli was curled up in the corner of the room, his small body trembling with emotion, his hands clutched tightly to his face. His sobs filled the room, raw and unfiltered, and Maya felt her chest tighten with sympathy. Without a word, she knelt down beside him, keeping a safe distance, but making sure he could see her. She didn't touch him immediately, instead giving him the space he desperately needed. "It's okay, Eli," Maya said softly, her voice a soothing whisper in the tense air. "I'm here." She watched as the boy's trembling stopped for a moment, his wide eyes locking onto hers. It wasn't a miraculous instant change, but it was something. Maya knew it would take time. She slowly, gently, reached into her pocket and pulled out a small toy, a simple rubber ball, something that could capture Eli's attention. She rolled it slowly toward him, watching as his eyes followed it, the smallest spark of curiosity igniting in them. As the ball rolled closer, Maya held her breath. Slowly, hesitantly, Eli reached out with trembling hands, his fingers brushing against the toy. It was a small moment, but for Maya, it was everything. She continued to speak to him softly, reassuring him that it was okay to be scared, that she understood. The room was silent for a long time, save for the sound of Eli's shallow breathing. Maya could feel the shift happening, a slow, almost imperceptible change that she had seen before in other children. Children who had been neglected, misunderstood, and forgotten. And as she sat there, quietly with Eli, she knew something had shifted within him, even if it was just a little. In the other room, Preston Vale watched the scene unfold through the slightly cracked door. His arms were crossed tightly across his chest, his expression unreadable. He had never paid much attention to Maya before, always seeing her as just another member of the household staff. But what he was witnessing now shook him to the core. The child, his son, who had been inconsolable for hours, was now calm. And it was Maya, a woman who had no medical degree, no formal training, who had done what no one else had been able to do. A wave of realization washed over him. Maya was no ordinary maid. There was something extraordinary about her, something that went beyond the surface. Preston's heart stirred as he watched her interact with his son. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time: guilt, admiration, and a sense of deep, overwhelming gratitude. His mind began to race with questions. Who was this woman, really? What else had he overlooked? And why had it taken him so long to see it? As Maya sat on the floor of Eli's room, keeping her distance yet close enough for him to feel her presence, she noticed how tightly his hands were clenched. His small frame was tense, and his wide eyes scanned the room as if he was unsure of where to go next. The ball she had rolled toward him sat a few feet away, its bright color an inviting distraction, but Eli was still stuck in his emotional turmoil. Maya didn't rush him. She knew better than to force anything on him. With patience and a calm voice, she repeated the words she had said earlier. "It's okay, Eli. I'm here with you." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Eli's trembling hands began to relax. His gaze shifted toward the toy once again, but this time, he did not immediately look away. It was as though he was considering it, as if a part of him was beginning to trust. Maya held her breath, hoping that the small shift she had noticed wasn't just a fleeting moment. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Eli, still wary, reached forward, his fingers brushing against the ball, sending it rolling just a little further across the floor. Maya allowed herself a quiet sigh of relief. She continued her gentle reassurances, speaking softly but clearly, not forcing him to respond. She knew that if she gave him time, he might open up on his own. The longer she sat there with him, the more Maya realized how many people in the world, including herself at times, had been quick to dismiss Eli's feelings as mere outbursts. But today, she understood. His world was different. His emotional boundaries were just as real, just as meaningful, but no one had ever really taken the time to listen. And as much as she had hoped to help him, Maya also found herself learning something new in the process. Eli's emotional pain wasn't a cry for attention, it was a cry for understanding, for someone to notice that he was struggling with something bigger than any of them could see. In that moment, Maya made a silent promise to him. She wouldn't turn away, not like everyone else had. She would stay. Minutes passed, and with each quiet word Maya spoke, the tension in the room seemed to lessen. Eli's breathing, once frantic and erratic, started to even out. He began to relax in small increments, and for the first time in what seemed like hours, Maya saw the slightest hint of a shift. Eli's eyes softened, and he reached out once more for the ball. This time, when his hand wrapped around it, he didn't pull back. He held it in his hand, the small victory in his quiet world. Maya smiled softly, proud of the courage he had shown. She knew it wasn't over, there would be more struggles ahead, but this was a significant step. As the boy began to play with the ball, slowly rolling it back and forth on the floor, Maya could feel a sense of peace filling the room. She stayed close, sitting on the floor beside him, giving him the space he needed but also the presence he craved. Meanwhile, downstairs, Preston was pacing in the grand living room, his mind racing. He had seen what had just unfolded in Eli's room, but he couldn't yet make sense of it. How had Maya, someone he had always regarded as just a quiet, unassuming maid, managed to calm Eli when no one else could? He wasn't sure how to process what he had witnessed. The power dynamics in the house had always been clear to him. He was the father, the man in control, the one with the money, the influence, the resources. But here, in his own home, it was Maya, the woman he had overlooked, who had reached his son when everyone else had failed. As Preston paced, his thoughts drifted back to his initial reaction. He had almost told Maya to leave, to step away from his son. But he had stopped himself. There had been something about the way she interacted with Eli, something genuine, something soft but strong that had made him hesitate. And now, as he stood there, he realized he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Maya wasn't just a maid. She was someone with an innate ability to connect with people, to see them for who they were, not just for what they appeared to be. She had something special, something he had missed because he had been too caught up in his own world of wealth and power. Maya had managed to do in minutes what the best therapists had failed to do for months. She had reached Eli on a level that no one else had, and for the first time in a long while, Preston felt something stir inside him, something that made him question everything he had taken for granted. It was as if, for the first time, he was seeing the world differently, through a lens of empathy and understanding that he had long since abandoned. The sound of Eli's laughter, faint but unmistakable, drifted down the hallway and into Preston's ears. It was a small sound, one that any other parent might have overlooked, but for Preston, it was the sound of hope, and it was a sound that Maya had brought back to life. Slowly, Preston turned toward the staircase. He knew that when this moment passed, when the initial shock wore off, things would change. The power dynamic in the house was about to shift, and he wasn't sure yet what that would mean for him, for his family, or for Maya. But for the first time in a long time, he felt something he had long forgotten, a sense of possibility. The next morning, Preston stood in his office, the blinds pulled halfway, letting the soft morning light filter in. His mind was still reeling from the events of the night before. The image of Maya sitting beside Eli, speaking to him with such calm authority, kept replaying in his head. He hadn't expected it, not from her, not from someone he had never truly noticed. The power in her simple actions had shaken him to his core. As he stared out the window, his mind wandered back to the moment when he had first seen Maya with his son. He had been standing just outside the door, watching through the crack as she gently coaxed Eli into a calm that none of the specialists or family members could achieve. It wasn't the first time Eli had thrown a fit, but it was the first time he had seen such a dramatic shift in his son's emotional state. Something in him had clicked. Maya had done what the therapists couldn't, what no one could, and it wasn't because of a degree or a professional qualification. It was because she understood. She understood his son in a way that no one else had, not even him. He had never taken the time to learn how to really connect with Eli. As a father, he had always tried to fix things with logic and solutions, but this had required something deeper, something more. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock on the door. "Come in," Preston called, turning toward the door. It was Clara, his wife, her face tired but calm. "We need to talk," she said softly, stepping inside. Clara looked at her husband, her eyes heavy with concern. "About last night?" she asked. Preston nodded, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. "Yeah, I can't stop thinking about it. About Maya." Clara's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "What about Maya?" she asked, her tone cautious. Preston hesitated for a moment, unsure how to express what he was feeling. "She did something last night that no one else could. She helped Eli in a way that no one else has been able to. And it's not just that. It's everything about her. Her calmness, her patience. It's like she knew exactly what Eli needed when no one else did." Clara was silent for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "She's just a maid, Preston," Clara said quietly, as if testing the weight of the words. Preston sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. But it's like she's not just a maid. She's something more. I don't know what it is, but I've been blind to it. She's been here all this time, and I've never really seen her, not like this." Clara's expression softened. "Preston, you know how I feel about Maya. She's a good person. She's always been kind to Eli, always been patient with him. But we can't just put her on a pedestal because of one moment, one act." Preston looked at his wife, his expression intense. "I'm not saying I'm putting her on a pedestal, but I can't ignore what happened last night. She reached Eli in a way that no one else has. And I feel like I've failed as a father. I've spent so much time thinking I could fix everything with money and resources, but that's not what Eli needs. Maybe I've been looking in the wrong places." Clara stepped forward, taking his hand in hers. "Preston, you've never been a bad father, but I understand what you're saying. I've noticed it too, how Maya has a way with him. She's different, but we need to figure out what this means. For all of us. For Eli, for you, for me." Preston nodded slowly, looking down at their hands. He felt a sense of guilt wash over him, a guilt that had nothing to do with money or status. It was the guilt of a father who had been absent in the most important way. He had been present physically, but not emotionally. He had been providing, but not truly connecting. And now, watching Eli's progress, he realized how much he had taken for granted. "I need to apologize to her," Preston said quietly, almost to himself. To Maya, Clara's gaze softened further. "I think that's a good idea, but you also need to understand that Maya is not just here to fix Eli. She's here to do her job. We need to be careful about how we approach this, for everyone's sake." Preston took a deep breath, his mind still racing. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't ignore Maya any longer. She had shown him a side of himself he had never wanted to see, and it made him question everything. Could he really change? Could he really become the father Eli needed? He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in years, he was willing to try. "You're right," Preston finally said, looking up at Clara. "I have to figure this out, and I will, starting with Maya." Clara smiled faintly, her eyes still filled with concern but also a touch of hope. "I know you will," she said softly. "But remember, it's not about fixing everything overnight. It's about showing up, and I think that's what Maya's been doing for Eli all along." Preston nodded, his gaze turning toward the staircase, where he knew Maya was still at work, quietly doing her job, unaware of the quiet shift she had triggered in the family. He had no idea what the future would hold, but he knew one thing: things were about to change in ways he hadn't expected. And it all started with Maya. The next day, Maya went about her usual routine in the Vale household, quietly working through the list of tasks she had been given. It was as if nothing had changed, but everything had. She moved through the rooms, dusting shelves, wiping down counters, and doing everything with the same quiet efficiency she had always shown. Yet, in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but remember what had happened the night before. The way Eli had calmed, the way Preston had watched her so intently, it was as if she had unlocked something in their family, a door that had been closed for far too long. She tried to push these thoughts out of her mind. She had a job to do, but the truth was, something had shifted, and Maya wasn't sure how to feel about it. As the hours passed, she found herself glancing toward the stairs every now and then, wondering if anyone would come to speak to her. It was only a matter of time before Preston would approach her. She could feel it. Sure enough, as the sun began to set, Maya was finishing up her work in the kitchen when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, startled, and found Preston standing in the doorway. His expression was serious, but there was something softer in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. "Maya," he said, his voice steady but with an underlying warmth. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Maya nodded, not sure what to expect. She had worked for the Vale family long enough to know that most conversations with Preston didn't veer far from business. But today felt different. She followed him into the living room, where he motioned for her to sit down. Maya hesitated but then took a seat on the couch. Preston sat across from her, his posture slightly more relaxed than usual. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It felt like there was something unspoken hanging in the air. Finally, Preston cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what happened last night," he began. Maya nodded again, her gaze focused on the floor. She wasn't sure what to say. "You did something I didn't think was possible," Preston continued, his voice low. "You helped Eli. You calmed him down in a way that no one else has been able to. I can't even begin to explain what that means to me." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She had never been one to seek recognition, but hearing Preston acknowledge her felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had always known Eli needed someone who truly understood him, but hearing it from Preston made it real. She shifted in her seat, looking up at him. "I didn't do anything special," she said quietly. "I just listened to him. Sometimes. That's all he needs." Preston was silent for a moment, processing her words. When he finally spoke again, his voice was softer, more reflective. "Maybe that's the problem," he said. "I've been so focused on fixing everything with money, with therapy, with solutions, but I haven't been listening. Not to Eli, not to you. I've been blind to what really matters." Maya felt a pang of sympathy for him. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the way he was struggling with everything he had overlooked. She knew it wasn't easy for him to admit. "You've been doing your best," she said gently, But sometimes, it's not about fixing things right away. It's about being there. Showing up. Preston met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something Maya couldn't quite place. "I've been doing this all wrong," he said, shaking his head. "I've spent so much time focusing on the wrong things. But you've shown me something I've been missing, something more important than anything else." Maya was quiet for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had never imagined that her simple act of helping Eli would lead to a conversation like this. She had only wanted to do the right thing, to help a child in need. But now, in this moment, she realized that her actions had opened something in Preston, a door he hadn't been willing to open before. "I think it's time I stop pretending," Preston said after a pause, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "I've been pretending that I could fix everything. But I can't. Not without help. Not without really understanding what Eli needs. And I need your help, Maya." Maya blinked, surprised by his words. She had never imagined that Preston would be asking her for help, much less admitting that he couldn't do it alone. It was a humbling moment, and she felt a rush of emotion stir inside her. She had always been the one to offer help, to step in when others couldn't. But now, she realized that this wasn't just about Eli anymore. It was about the entire family, and how they all needed to learn how to show up for each other. "I'll do whatever I can," Maya said quietly, her voice filled with sincerity. "But it's going to take time. Eli needs consistency, and so does everyone else." Preston nodded, his gaze firming as if a weight had been lifted. "I know," he said, "but I'm ready. I'm ready to do what it takes." As Maya looked at him, she could see the change in him. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start, a willingness to understand, to listen, to show up. And in that moment, Maya realized that this family was no longer just a group of strangers living under one roof. They were beginning to heal, to rebuild, and maybe, just maybe, they were starting to understand what really mattered. As days passed, things in the Vale household began to shift, though the changes were subtle at first. Maya continued her usual duties, but there was a new respect in the way Preston interacted with her. He no longer just saw her as the maid. He saw her as someone who had unlocked something deep within his family, a key that had been missing for so long. But even though the acknowledgement was there, Maya could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just with Preston. Clara, his wife, was still wary, still unsure of how to deal with the situation. She was more reserved, as if watching from the sidelines, waiting to see if Preston's newfound understanding of their son's needs would truly last. As for Eli, he had made progress, but it was slow. Each day brought small victories, like the way he would calmly sit down for dinner without throwing a tantrum, or how he would occasionally make eye contact with Maya when she spoke to him. But there were still moments of struggle, times when his emotions would overwhelm him, and Maya had to step in to calm him down. During these times, she noticed that Preston and Clara would often watch from a distance, unsure of how to intervene. Maya would step forward and simply speak to Eli in the softest tone, reminding him that it was okay to feel upset, that it was okay to take a moment. And each time, Eli would calm, a small smile creeping across his face as he realized he wasn't alone. One evening, as the sun began to set and the house filled with the soft glow of warm light, Maya was finishing up her chores in the kitchen when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Preston standing there, a hesitant look in his eyes. She had grown used to his presence over the past few days, but there was something different now, something more vulnerable. "Maya," he began, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been thinking about something, about what you've been doing for Eli." Maya's heart skipped a beat, unsure of where this conversation might lead. She wiped her hands on her apron, watching him carefully. "I've been wondering," Preston continued, "if you would be willing to help us more, not just with Eli, but with everything." Maya frowned slightly, confused. "Help with everything? I'm not sure I understand." Preston took a deep breath, his hands clasped in front of him as he looked at her with a mixture of sincerity and uncertainty. "What I mean is, I've been so focused on fixing things in the wrong way. I've relied on my money, my status, and those things have never worked when it comes to Eli. I've seen how you've been there for him, how you've shown him that it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's made me realize that there's a bigger picture here." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "You've helped Eli in a way that no one else has, and I think that's because you see him, really see him. And we need that. We need someone who understands, who isn't afraid to step into his world and show him that he's not broken, that he's just different." Maya felt her chest tighten as she listened to him. She had never expected such words from Preston. He had always been the powerful businessman, the father who tried to fix things with his influence, and now here he was, asking her for help. It was a humbling moment, one that made her realize just how much he had changed. "I don't know what you're asking me, Preston," Maya replied softly. "I've been helping Eli because that's what he needs, but I'm not sure I can help with everything. I'm just a maid." Preston's expression softened, and he stepped closer to her. "You're more than that," he said quietly. "You're the one who's been here for Eli, the one who's helped him open up when no one else could. And that's more than just doing your job. That's showing up. You've done more for my son than I ever have." Maya felt a lump form in her throat at his words. She wasn't used to being praised, especially not like this. She had always been taught to keep her head down, to work hard, and to never expect anything in return. But now, for the first time, she felt seen, truly seen for the work she did, for the care she gave. "I don't know if I can help more than I already have," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'll keep doing what I can. I'll keep being there for Eli." Preston nodded, his face filled with a mix of gratitude and a newfound sense of humility. "That's all we need," he said softly. "Just keep being you, Maya. That's what matters the most." As he left the kitchen, Maya stood there for a moment, processing his words. She had always believed that her job was just that, a job. But now, she saw that what she was doing went far beyond that. She wasn't just cleaning their house or taking care of Eli's needs. She was helping heal a family. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to heal a part of herself too. Over the next few weeks, Maya continued to quietly work in the Vale household, but a subtle change had taken place. The family dynamic was shifting, and with it, her role had grown in ways she had never anticipated. Preston had kept his word. He had been present for Eli more than ever, but what was even more remarkable was the way he and Clara began to engage with her, showing a level of respect and understanding she had never experienced in this house. It was the little things. The way Preston would greet her with a nod, a silent acknowledgement of what she had done for their son. How Clara no longer ignored her, but offered a smile, a small gesture that showed Maya was no longer just another employee, but a person in her own right. Maya, for her part, had remained focused on her work, never seeking praise, but the changes didn't go unnoticed. It wasn't just in her relationship with the family, it was in her approach to her job. She found herself feeling more at ease, less like she was in a constant state of waiting for someone to tell her what to do. Instead, she saw the needs of the family, the small shifts in Eli's behavior, and she stepped in when she saw that they needed her, even without being asked. One afternoon, as she was wiping down the kitchen counter, Clara approached her with a hesitant smile. "Maya," she said softly, "I've been thinking about something. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. For Eli, for all of us." Maya looked up, surprised by the warmth in Clara's voice. She hadn't expected anything like this. "I'm just doing my job," Maya replied, her voice steady but humble. Clara shook her head. "It's more than that. You've done something none of us could do. You've made a difference, and we see it." The sincerity in Clara's words took Maya by surprise. She had always been the one to offer kindness, but never had she expected to be on the receiving end of such gratitude. "I just want to help," Maya said quietly. "Eli deserves to be understood." Clara's eyes softened, and she placed a hand gently on Maya's shoulder. "I know, and you've helped him in ways we couldn't. I don't think we'll ever be able to truly thank you enough for that." As Clara walked away, Maya felt a lump form in her throat. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she truly belonged. But the changes didn't end there. One afternoon, as Preston was sitting in his study, he called Maya in. When she stepped into the room, he was sitting at his desk, looking contemplative, as if he had been waiting for her. "Maya," he began, his voice firm yet gentle, "I've been thinking about what you've done for Eli. You've helped him in ways I never thought possible. And it's not just Eli. It's the whole family. Your presence has made a difference. I think it's time I do something for you." Maya stood still, confused. She had never asked for anything, let alone expected anything in return. Preston continued, "I want to offer you something more. A real position here, with more responsibility and better pay. You've earned it." Maya blinked in surprise. This was more than just a job offer. It was a recognition of everything she had done, not just for Eli, but for the entire family. She opened her mouth to speak, but words failed her. She had never expected this. "You don't have to decide right away," Preston said, seeing her hesitation. "Take your time. But I want you to know that you are valued here. Your work, your heart, it matters." Maya felt a rush of emotion, but she quickly composed herself. She had never imagined such an offer, especially from someone like Preston, who had always been so distant. But now, she saw him in a different light. He wasn't just the wealthy businessman who ran a tight ship. He was a man who was learning, who was growing, and who had begun to truly understand the people around him. I don't know what to say," Maya finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," Preston said, his voice softening. "Just know that this is a sincere offer, and if you accept it, we will all be better for it." Maya nodded slowly, her heart heavy with gratitude. She had always worked hard, kept her head down, and never asked for much. But now, with this offer, she realized how far she had come, not just in her job, but in her life. She had found a family here, one that saw her for who she truly was, and not just for the role she played. Over the next few days, Maya took time to think. It wasn't just about the offer, it was about what it meant for her future, for the relationship she had with the Vale family, and for the life she wanted to build. As she sat in her small room at night, reflecting on everything that had happened, she realized something important. She had never felt more at home than she did now. And when she finally made her decision, it wasn't just about a job, it was about the chance to be part of something bigger, something more meaningful. She was ready to step into her own future, a future that had been uncertain for so long, but now seemed full of possibility. As Maya walked into the Vale household the next morning, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. The offer that Preston had extended to her still weighed heavily on her mind, and she knew the family was expecting her response. She wasn't sure what to think. Part of her was grateful for the opportunity, but another part of her hesitated. She had spent so many years keeping her head down, working hard for what little she had, that the idea of being valued so openly, so genuinely, felt overwhelming. But she had made her decision. She would accept the offer. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Preston appeared in the hallway, his face serious but not unkind. "Maya," he said, walking toward her. "I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk." Maya stopped and turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "About the offer?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Preston nodded. "Yes," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I just wanted to make sure you're certain about your decision. It's a big step, and I want you to know that we're here to support you." Maya felt her chest tighten. "I'm sure," she said softly, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I've thought about it, and I'm ready. This is the right thing for me." Preston smiled slightly, but there was something in his expression that made Maya uneasy. "I just want to be sure," he repeated. "This isn't just about the job. This is about you becoming a part of this family in a way that's different from before." Maya nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure how to respond. She wasn't used to being part of a family she had always kept to herself, always been on the outside looking in. But things had changed. And now, she realized, they were changing even more. As she walked away, she couldn't help but wonder what it would mean for her to truly be part of this family. She had never thought of herself as someone who could belong to a place like this. She had spent so many years working in the shadows, never truly seen, never truly valued. But things had shifted. She had made a difference to Eli, to Preston, to all of them. And now, she was beginning to see that her presence mattered. As the day passed, Maya threw herself into her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to her conversation with Preston. What would it mean to be part of this family? What would it mean to truly be seen? To not just be the person who cleaned the floors and cooked the meals, but to be someone who was an equal, someone who had a voice. The thought filled her with both excitement and fear. That evening, After the last of the chores were done, Maya sat in the kitchen, feeling an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. The house was quiet, the family scattered to their separate corners, doing their own things. It was the calm after the storm, and Maya finally allowed herself a moment of peace. As she sipped her cup of tea, she heard footsteps approaching. Looking up, she saw Preston walking toward her, his expression thoughtful. "Maya," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "I know this is a big change, but I want you to know that you've earned this. You've done more than just take care of Eli. You've taken care of all of us, in a way that no one else has." Maya's heart tightened at his words. She had always thought of herself as just someone who did her job, but Preston's words made her realize something. She had been doing more than just her job. She had been caring for this family, for Eli, in a way that no one else could. "I'm just trying to do what's right," Maya said softly. "Eli needs someone who understands him, and that's what I've tried to do." Preston nodded. "You've done more than that. You've helped him find his voice, and you've helped me find mine." Maya looked up at him, surprised by his words. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You've shown me that being a father isn't about just fixing things or providing. It's about being there, truly being there. And I wasn't doing that, not until you showed me how." Maya felt her chest tighten at his honesty. "I never meant to show you anything," she said, looking away. I just wanted to help." Preston reached out and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You've done more than help," he said softly. "You've changed everything, and I'm grateful, more than I could ever say." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Maya felt a rush of emotions, the weight of everything she had done, everything she had become. She had never imagined that she would have this impact on anyone, especially not on a family like the Vales. But here she was, standing in the kitchen of a home that had once felt foreign to her, surrounded by people who had begun to see her not as just the maid, but as someone who had made a real difference. As Preston left her side and walked toward the staircase, Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never truly believed she belonged here, but now she was beginning to think that maybe she did. Maybe, just maybe, she had found her place. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that she had a future here, not just as an employee, but as someone who mattered. Someone who was part of something bigger than herself. The next few days passed in a blur, and as the weeks went on, Maya found herself settling into a new rhythm in the Vale household. It wasn't just the work she had been doing for months, but something deeper had changed. Preston, Clara, and even Eli were different. They had begun to see her, truly see her, as a part of their family. It wasn't the same as before, when she had been just the maid, the one who cleaned the house and cared for their son. Now, she was someone they trusted, someone who had become integral to their lives. One afternoon, as Maya was finishing up her duties in the kitchen, Preston called for her. He had been working from home that day, and she hadn't seen him much, but there was something different in the tone of his voice. She walked down the hall and entered his study, where he was sitting at his desk, looking over some paperwork. As she stepped into the room, Preston looked up at her, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty in his eyes. "Maya," he began, his voice steady but with a hint of emotion. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had been waiting for this moment ever since their conversation weeks ago, unsure of what to expect, but still uncertain about where things were headed. She took a seat across from him, silently waiting for him to continue. "I know that things have changed around here," Preston continued, "and I know that I asked a lot of you, asking you to stay on with us in this new role. But I want you to know that I don't just appreciate what you've done for Eli. I appreciate you, as a person, as part of this family." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to hearing such things. She had always been the one to give, to do for others without asking for anything in return. But hearing these words from Preston, a man she had seen as distant and aloof for so long, was something she hadn't expected. "Preston, she started, but her voice caught in her throat. "I don't know what to say." He smiled softly, the warmth in his eyes deepening. "You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that your presence here has changed everything. For me, for Clara, and for Eli." Maya looked down at her hands, her heart pounding. She had never asked for this kind of recognition, but it meant more to her than she could express. She had always just wanted to help, to make a difference in the life of a young boy who had been so misunderstood. But now, it felt like something bigger was happening. It wasn't just about Eli anymore. It was about her place in the world, and about the family she had never imagined being a part of. Preston paused, as if giving her a moment to process his words. Then, he continued, his voice more thoughtful. Maya, I've been thinking a lot about the future. Not just for Eli, but for this family. For you, too. I want you to know that you have a permanent place here, if that's what you want. This isn't just a job. This is something more. Maya looked up at him, her heart racing. She had never considered the possibility of staying here long-term, of building a life with the Vales. But now, hearing these words from Preston, it felt like everything had come full circle. She had gone from being the outsider, the one who didn't belong, to someone who was being offered a place in a family that, for so long, had been out of reach. I never thought I would be asked to stay, Maya said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. I never thought I would have a place here. I've always just tried to do what I can, to help where I can, but I never expected this. Preston nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. You've earned this, Maya. You've earned more than I can say. You've not only helped Eli, but you've helped us all. You've shown us what it means to care, to be patient, and to truly see each other, and that's something I'll never take for granted. Maya felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had always believed that her place in the world was as a caretaker, someone who worked behind the scenes to make things happen. But now, for the first time in her life, she realized that she had a voice. She had something to offer that went beyond just cleaning or cooking. She had helped this family grow, and in the process, she had grown as well. I'm honored, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be a part of your family. Preston smiled, his eyes filled with sincerity. And we're honored to have you, Maya. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure. We're better with you in our lives. As Maya stood to leave, she felt a warmth in her chest. The family that had once seemed so distant, so unreachable, now felt like her own, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that she belonged. She wasn't just the maid anymore. She was a part of something real, a part of a family. As the weeks went by, the changes in the Vale household became more evident, but they were not without their challenges. Maya had taken her place within the family, and while the atmosphere had softened, there were still moments of tension that no one could ignore. Preston and Clara were adjusting, trying to incorporate Maya into their lives, but it wasn't always smooth. There were old habits to break, and the dynamics of power and control were hard to shift. Clara, though she had come a long way, still found herself struggling to accept that someone like Maya could have such a profound impact on their lives. At times, Maya could feel the distance between them, a wall that hadn't fully come down. But Maya wasn't discouraged. She continued to show up, day in and day out, doing what she did best, caring for Eli, being patient, and offering the quiet support the family needed. Eli, too, was making progress, though not without setbacks. His breakthrough moments had become more frequent, but there were still days when his emotions got the best of him. Maya had learned how to calm him in those moments, using the same gentle methods that had worked before. Her bond with him had deepened, and she felt a sense of responsibility to help him thrive. One evening, after dinner, as Maya was clearing the table, Clara approached her. There was a new look in her eyes, one that wasn't there before, something softer, more understanding. Maya, she began, her voice tentative, I want to talk to you about something. Maya glanced up, unsure of what to expect. Clara's tone was gentle but serious. I've been thinking a lot lately, she continued, about everything. About how things have changed in this house, and about how I've treated you. Maya set down the plate she was holding and turned to face Clara. She could tell this was important. Clara, you don't have to apologize, Maya said quickly. I understand. It's not easy, changing how we see things. Clara took a deep breath, her expression shifting to one of vulnerability. It's more than that. I've seen how much you've done for Eli, for all of us, and I realize now that I've taken you for granted. I didn't fully appreciate what you were doing or who you are. Maya was quiet, absorbing Clara's words. She had never expected Clara to admit something like this. "I know I've been hard to get along with, and I want to change that," Clara said, her voice more sincere than Maya had ever heard it. "You've shown me something I didn't even know I was missing. You've shown me how to be patient, how to listen, and I can see how much you care about Eli. I didn't realize how much you really meant to this family until now." Maya felt a mix of emotions, but the most prominent one was relief. It wasn't about needing Clara's approval, but hearing her admit that she had been wrong, that she had seen Maya's value, was a huge shift in their relationship. "Thank you," Maya said softly, her voice steady. "I've just been doing what I thought was right. I care about Eli, and I want to help him as much as I can." Clara nodded. "I know, and I want to do better. I want to be a better mother, a better wife, and a better person. And part of that is understanding the people who are here, who are doing the work, who are making a difference." Maya was silent for a moment, trying to process everything. She had never expected this kind of acknowledgement, especially not from Clara. It was a rare moment of understanding, one that she hadn't known she was waiting for. But now that it was here, it felt like a breakthrough. Later that evening, as Maya was preparing to leave for the night, Preston approached her. His expression was more serious than usual, but there was a softness to it. "Maya, I need to ask you something," he said. Maya turned to him, her heart racing slightly. "Of course," she replied. "What is it?" Preston hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words. "I've been thinking about the future," he said, his voice low, "and I realized something. I don't want you to just stay here as an employee. I want you to be part of this family. I've already asked you to help Eli, but now I'm asking you to help us all." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean that I want you to stay," Preston said, his gaze steady. "Not just for Eli, but for all of us. We've all been changed by your presence, by your care, and I don't want to let that go. You've earned a place here, Maya." Maya felt a wave of emotions rush over her. She had never imagined this moment. She had come here to do a job, to help a family in need, but now she was being asked to be part of something much larger, something that she hadn't expected but now couldn't deny. I don't know what to say," Maya said, her voice trembling. "You don't have to say anything," Preston replied. "Just know that this is sincere. You've shown me what it means to care, and I don't want to lose that." Maya nodded slowly, her heart filled with gratitude. She had never thought that a simple job could lead to such a profound transformation, not just for the family, but for herself as well. "I'm honored," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "and I'll stay. I'll stay for Eli, and for all of you." In that moment, Maya knew her place had been secured, not just as an employee, but as someone who truly belonged, someone who had been seen, heard, and valued for the first time in her life. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of reflection, as Maya began to truly settle into her new role in the Vale household. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about her place in this family, a place she had never imagined for herself. The family, too, was adjusting, learning how to truly embrace the changes that had come with Maya's presence. Eli's progress continued, small but steady steps forward, and the bond between Maya and him grew stronger with each passing day. She saw the boy differently now. He wasn't just a child with a disability. He was a young person who needed understanding and patience, and she was there to give it to him. Preston and Clara, too, were growing, each in their own way. Preston, who had once been so closed off, now spent more time with Eli, talking to him, learning his needs, trying his best to connect. Clara, while still a little distant at times, had begun to soften, her walls coming down slowly. Maya noticed the way Clara would sometimes offer a word of encouragement to Eli, or help him with his homework, something she had never done before. There was a new warmth in the house, a subtle shift in the energy. It wasn't perfect yet, but there was a feeling that things were getting better. Maya had always been a listener, a quiet observer, but now she saw that she was also a catalyst for change. Her role had shifted, not just from being an employee to being a part of the family, but from being someone who was just there to do a job to someone who could make a real difference. One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, the atmosphere felt different. It was light, comfortable, and there was a sense of ease that hadn't been there before. The conversation was easy, and for once, Maya felt like she was just another member of the family. As they ate, Clara turned to Maya, her eyes soft. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you've done for us, for Eli, and I just wanted to say, thank you. You've really helped us in ways we didn't even know we needed." Maya looked up, surprised by Clara's sincerity. "I didn't do anything special," she replied quietly. "I just helped Eli. He's a wonderful boy. He just needed someone to listen to him." Clara nodded, her smile warm. "That's exactly it. You've listened. You've understood him when no one else could, and you've helped all of us understand him better too." Maya felt a lump in her throat, the weight of Clara's words sinking in. She had never expected such acknowledgement. It wasn't just about being thanked, it was about being truly seen. "I'm just glad I could help," Maya said softly, looking down at her plate. "Eli deserves to be understood." Clara's gaze softened. "And you've given him that. You've given us all that. I can't thank you enough for what you've done." Preston, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, looked at Maya with a sense of quiet admiration. "I agree with Clara," he said, his voice low. "You've done more for Eli than we could have ever hoped for. You've given us a chance to be better, to be a better family, and I'm grateful for that." Maya smiled, her heart full. She had never expected to hear these words. Not from Preston, not from anyone. But hearing them now, she felt a sense of peace, as though everything had finally come full circle. It wasn't just about the job, the money, or the work anymore. It was about the connection, the bond that had formed between them all, one that was built on trust, understanding, and respect. As the evening wore on and the conversation continued, Maya felt a sense of belonging that she had never known before. The walls that had once separated her from this family had come down, and in their place was something stronger, something real. By the time dinner was over, Maya felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't just the help anymore. She was a part of something bigger, something more meaningful. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that this was where she truly belonged. As she cleared the dishes from the table, she looked around at the family she had helped to heal, at the boy she had helped to guide, and at the couple who had started to open their hearts. Maya knew that the journey wasn't over, but she was no longer afraid of what the future held. She had found her place, and it was here, with them, with the Vales. For the first time, Maya felt like she had found a home. As the months passed, life in the Vale household began to settle into a new rhythm, one that was less about hierarchy and more about understanding and connection. Maya had found her place, not just as the caretaker of Eli, but as an integral part of the family. The shift in dynamics was subtle but powerful, and it was clear that everyone, including Preston and Clara, was learning how to navigate this new territory. Eli had made remarkable progress, and it wasn't just because of Maya's efforts. It was because the family as a whole had begun to change, to adapt, to open up in ways they hadn't before. Preston, in particular, had transformed. No longer the distant, rigid father. He had become more present, more engaged with Eli's world. He spent time with him, playing games, reading together, and most importantly, listening to him. Preston had started to understand that being a father wasn't about fixing everything or providing solutions. It was about being there, truly being there, in the moments that mattered most. Clara, too, had made strides. Though her relationship with Maya remained more reserved, there was a newfound respect between them. Clara had stopped seeing Maya as just the maid and began to see her as someone who had brought something invaluable into their lives. It wasn't just the care she gave to Eli, but the warmth, the understanding, and the patience that Maya had shown, even when it wasn't easy. There were still difficult days, of course, moments when the old habits tried to creep back in. But overall, things were different. The family had started to heal, and Maya, though still quiet and humble, had become the quiet force holding them together. One afternoon, as Maya was preparing dinner in the kitchen, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to find Preston standing in the doorway, his expression serious but thoughtful. Maya, he said, his voice steady, I wanted to talk to you. Maya set down the knife she was using to chop vegetables and turned to face him. Her heart skipped a beat, unsure of what this conversation would bring. What's on your mind? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Preston hesitated for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. I've been thinking a lot about the future, he said slowly. About how things have changed, and about the role you've played in that change. I just want to say thank you. I know I haven't always shown it, but you've done more than I could ever have hoped for. You've helped Eli, but you've also helped me, and you've helped Clara. I don't think I ever really understood what it meant to be a family until you showed me. Maya blinked, surprised by his words. It wasn't that she hadn't seen Preston's efforts to change, but hearing him speak so openly about it made something in her chest tighten. You've been more than just a part of this house, Preston continued, his voice softening. You've been a part of us. You've been the one to help us all see what really matters, to show us how to be present, how to listen, and I don't think I can ever express enough how grateful I am for that. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing his words. She had never asked for this kind of gratitude, never expected it. She had simply done what she thought was right. But now, as Preston stood there, acknowledging everything she had done, it felt like the weight of all her efforts had finally been recognized. I just wanted to do what was best for Eli, Maya said softly. He's such a special boy, and he deserves to be understood. I'm glad I could help him. Preston nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. And you've done more than that. You've helped all of us. You've helped me be a better father, a better husband, and that's something I never could have done without you. Maya's heart swelled with emotion. She had always believed that her purpose was to help others, but she had never imagined the impact she would have on a family like the Vales. She had always thought of herself as just someone who did her job, someone who was never really seen. But now, she realized that she had become someone who was not only seen but valued, not just for the work she did, but for who she was. Thank you, Maya said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I never expected any of this. I just wanted to help. Preston stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. And you have, Maya, more than you know. The sincerity in his voice made Maya feel like she was finally where she was meant to be, as though all the struggles she had faced, all the doubts she had harbored, had led her to this moment. I don't know what the future holds, Preston continued, but I know that whatever happens, you will always have a place here with us. You're not just part of this family, you're one of us. Maya smiled softly, a feeling of warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, not just for what she could do, but for who she was. And as she stood there, in the kitchen of a home that had once felt so foreign to her, she knew one thing for sure. She had found where she truly belonged. The future, with all its uncertainty, no longer seemed so daunting. Because now, Maya knew that she wasn't alone. She was part of a family, a real family, and that made all the difference. The weeks rolled on, and the changes in the Vale household became more permanent, more ingrained. Maya had settled into her new role, and though the family had gone through difficult adjustments, it was clear that their bond had deepened. Preston had taken full responsibility for his actions, doing his best to be a better father, a better husband. He spent more time with Eli, learning to understand him in ways he had never done before. Clara, though still finding it difficult to fully open up, had begun to soften. She spent more time with Eli too, offering him small gestures of affection. And even when it was hard for her to express her emotions, Maya noticed her effort. The house no longer felt like a place full of tension, where each person lived in their own bubble. It felt like a home, a real home where people cared for one another. One evening, as Maya was cleaning the kitchen after dinner, she overheard Clara speaking with Preston in the next room. Their voices were soft, but Maya could hear the sincerity in Clara's words. She wasn't used to hearing this level of openness between them. I never thought I would say this, Clara's voice said. But Maya, she's done more for this family than I ever expected. She's not just someone who works for us. She's become part of us, and I can see now that we've been blind to it for so long. I've been blind to it. Maya's heart swelled as she stood still, listening to Clara's words. She had always tried to do her best, to give her all without expecting anything in return. But hearing Clara acknowledge her efforts, hearing her admit that Maya had changed the family in ways she never thought possible, brought a deep sense of fulfillment Maya hadn't anticipated. "You've been hard on her, Clara," Preston replied gently. "We've all been hard on her in some way. She's always been the one to give, to help. And we've always seen her as just the maid. I realize now that we've never really seen her for who she is, and that's something I regret. Maya has given us so much more than we could ever repay." Maya didn't know what to say. She wasn't the type to eavesdrop, but in that moment, the words made her feel something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time worth. The weight of everything she had done, all the work she had put into helping Eli and this family, felt recognized for the first time. She wasn't just a worker. She wasn't just someone who cleaned their home. She was a part of something much bigger. Something meaningful. That night, as she lay in her room, the moonlight streaming through the window, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought back to the first day she had walked into the Vale household, unsure of her place, of how she would fit into a world that seemed so foreign. She had never imagined she would become so important to them, never thought she could have such an impact on their lives. But now, everything was different. She had helped them heal in ways they didn't even realize they needed. Eli had found peace in his own way, and Preston had found the kind of father he had always wanted to be. Even Clara had begun to change, breaking down walls she had built for years. The next morning, after the usual morning bustle, Preston sought her out in the kitchen. Maya was wiping down the counters, lost in her thoughts, when she heard his voice behind her. "Maya, I've been meaning to ask you something," he said. She turned, expecting the usual conversation, the routine thanks for a job well done. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. "Of course, Preston," she replied, unsure of what he might say. He paused for a moment, his face softening, and then he spoke with a sincerity that made Maya stop what she was doing. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the future, about all of us, and I want you to know something. We don't just need you here because of your work. We need you because of who you are. You've been with us through the hard moments, and you've made us all better for it. I want to offer you something more, something permanent, a real place here with us, as part of this family." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected that. She had never imagined that one day she would be offered more than a job. But as she looked at Preston, standing before her with an open heart, she realized that this wasn't just about her working for them anymore. It was about her being included in their lives, in their journey forward as a family. "Preston," Maya said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I never thought something like this would happen. I've just been trying to help. I never expected to be part of this." He smiled warmly, his eyes full of kindness and sincerity. "You've already been part of this. You've been a part of our family all along, whether we knew it or not, and I want you to know that you have a real place here, if you want it. We've learned so much from you, Maya, more than we could ever thank you for." Maya's mind raced, her emotions running wild. This wasn't just an offer, it was the recognition she hadn't realized she had needed. She hadn't been looking for approval, but now that she had it, it was a feeling she couldn't shake. "I would love that," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'd love to be part of this. I've always wanted to belong somewhere, and now I feel like I do." Preston's eyes brightened, and for the first time, Maya saw him not just as the man who had hired her, but as someone who truly saw her, who truly understood what she had given. "Then it's settled," Preston said, his voice filled with warmth. "You're part of this family, Maya. We wouldn't have it any other way." And in that moment, Maya knew her life had changed forever. She had found her place, not just as an employee, but as a part of something that was real, something that would last. A family, a true family. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Maya stood by the window in the Vale household, looking out at the sprawling garden that had become as much a part of her life as the family itself. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow across the house, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt truly at peace. The road that had led her here hadn't been easy, but it had brought her to a place she never thought possible, a place where she felt seen, valued, and most importantly, loved. The transition from being the quiet, unnoticeable employee to being a true member of the family had been gradual. But now, as she looked back, Maya could see how far they all had come. Eli was thriving, his once frequent emotional outbursts now rare, thanks to the understanding and care he had received from not only Maya but his parents, who had learned how to truly be present with him. Preston, once distant and focused only on fixing problems with money or authority, had transformed into a more compassionate and attentive father. He no longer saw his role as one of control but as one of support. Clara, too, had made strides, though more slowly. The woman who had once seen Maya as an outsider, a mere maid, had begun to treat her with warmth and respect. The walls between them had come down, and Clara had started to embrace her role not just as a mother and wife, but as part of a larger family dynamic that Maya was now a central part of. The family dinners, once tense and filled with silent judgments, had become a time of shared stories and laughter. There was a lightness to the house now, a sense of unity that Maya had never imagined possible. As she watched the sun dip below the horizon, Preston entered the room. He looked at her with a quiet smile, one that spoke volumes more than words ever could. "Everything okay?" he asked gently, walking over to stand beside her. Maya nodded, her gaze still fixed on the fading light outside. "Yeah," she said softly. "It's just, sometimes, I can't believe how much has changed." Preston placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch comforting, reassuring. "Neither can I, but I'm glad it has." There was a brief silence before he added, "You've done more for us than we ever thought possible. And I mean that, Maya. You've helped us see each other in ways we couldn't before. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I owe you a lot more than just thanks." Maya smiled, but there was a sense of humility in her that kept her from speaking. She had never done any of it for thanks. She had done it because she cared, because she saw the potential for healing within this family and knew she could help unlock it. It was more than just a job. It was something that felt right, something that had become a part of who she was. "You don't owe me anything, Preston," she replied quietly. "I just did what felt right." Preston's gaze softened, his voice almost a whisper as he said, "You've shown me what it means to be a father, and I think I'm finally starting to get it. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. I'm trying for Eli, and for you." His words held a sincerity that Maya had never heard from him before. She turned to face him, her heart swelling with emotion. "You've come a long way, Preston," she said, her voice filled with quiet admiration. "And I can see how much you're trying. Eli sees it, too. We all do." Preston gave a small nod, and for a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. Then, he spoke again, his voice firm but full of affection. "I know I've asked a lot of you, Maya, but I want you to know that you've become part of this family. You've been here for us when we needed you most, and now, I want to make sure you know that you're always going to have a place here." Maya's heart fluttered at his words, but she remained calm, understanding the depth of his offer. "I already know that," she said, her voice steady. "I've always known that. This family is where I belong." There was no hesitation in her words, no doubt. She had found a place where she was loved, where she was seen, and where she could contribute in ways that truly mattered. Preston smiled at her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Maya realized that they had both come full circle. She wasn't just someone who helped the family, she was now a vital part of it. As she looked out the window again, she felt a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that the road ahead was going to be filled with more growth, more healing, and more love. She had found her family, and they had found her. The future, whatever it held, no longer seemed uncertain, because together, they were stronger than ever before. In this heartwarming and powerful story, the transformation of a family unfolds as a Black woman enters their lives, bringing understanding, patience, and change. From the initial struggles of a distant father and a family torn apart by misunderstanding to a unified household filled with love and growth, this is a compelling narrative of how small acts of kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. As the Black woman, Maya, helps a young boy with autism, she teaches not just him but his parents how to truly connect with one another, creating a bond that will last a lifetime. Maya's journey is a testament to the power of empathy, and how one person can make a lasting difference in the lives of others. Through her actions, Maya becomes an irreplaceable part of this family, showing them that love and patience are the keys to overcoming adversity. This touching story highlights the strength of Black stories, the importance of family, and the value of seeing people for who they truly are. As Maya's bond with the family grows, so does her role, from caretaker to a vital family member. The power of Black stories is evident in every moment of Maya's quiet strength and dedication to those she loves. In the end, it is clear that Maya's presence has transformed not just Eli, the young boy, but the entire family, showing them that being seen and understood is more important than anything else. This is a beautiful reminder of how Black stories can change lives, inspire growth, and lead to a future filled with love and belonging.